Let's do it.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Bridget Sumser, no stranger to these things. Hi, Bridge. Good to see you.
So happy to be here.
Um, Lovely. We haven't done this in a while together. I'm glad to be here with you. So yeah, I'll say this a few things. Gonna get started. So welcome, folks. Old folks, welcome back. You know the drill with these things. New folks, we'll just say real quick. Um, these are really sort of just big old conversations, ideally. Bridget and I we'll start off, we'll go through some slides, kind of level set, but this is not at all meant to be a lecture. Questions, comments will be welcome along the way. Sometimes we wait to the end, but today we welcome them along the way. That's sort of Bridget style. So let's do Bridget style. So don't hold back, but also no pressure. You know, this is meant to be a phrase that may be starting to get hackneyed, but it really is meant to be a safe place.
Mm.
And so really anything goes within the basic bounds of respect and kindness, including to yourself, please. So that's about it. So with that, today, just a teeny little subject called relationships. We should cover that in about two or 3 minutes, probably.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a biggie. It's a biggie. It's everything, as we'll see.
Yeah.
But before we jump in, Bridge, I'm sorry, am I cutting you off? Was there something you
No,
wanted to say?
you're good.
Sorry.
You're good. No.
Okay. All right. Before that, let's cut over to the beloved Sonia. Hi, Sons.
Hi, BJ. Hi, everyone. Thank you
Mhm.
so much for being with us today. So, as BJ mentioned, he and Bridget are going to go through some slides, and during their conversation or after, you have two ways that you can check in with us and kind of interact or ask a question. You can click on the raise hand button, and we will unmute you, and you can speak with Bridget and BJ about your question. And if you'd prefer to not do that, you can click on the Q&A button and type in your question, and we will read it aloud for you. So again, two options. You can raise your hand and speak with us, or you can click on Q&A and I will read it aloud for you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Sonia.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks, Son. All right, Gidgy.
Yeah. So I'm so happy to be here with you all today. And it's interesting. I don't often like feel too nervous about these things, but for some reason I feel a little like jittery today. And I think it's because relationships it is so big. It is kind of the whole thing, right? Relationship to ourselves, relationship to one another, relationship to place, relationship to body, right? It's huge.
Yes. Amen. I do kind of think it is a way of a lens through which you can see all of existence or life or something. Without any hyperbole, I believe that statement. So
Totally.
yeah, well, the good news here, Gidge, is there's not a chance in hell we're going to cover it all. So maybe the pressure's off.
Totally. We're just gonna
Yeah.
jump into some things that come to our mind, and just to reiterate, like the point is to be with you. So if we say something that spawns something in you, please jump in or
Right on.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think, the word that sits so next to relationship for me is really about connection. And that also feels kind of like the point of all of it.
And
And
maybe one other C word, communication, too.
yes,
Yeah.
how we make sense of it across all of these like supposed divides between you and me and my body, us and the earth, right? How do we act through our words and all the places we communicate from? One of the things that we really know is that serious illness amplifies all of this, right? It brings into new light and changes some of our operating mode, or the things that we've taken for granted, or the things that we haven't liked, right? But it changes. Relationships are always changing. And then serious illness kind of like magnifies that and sometimes makes that really, really loud. And that's a huge thing, a huge additional thing to adjust and adapt to when we're also just trying to figure out, like, what is the world now?
Mm. Yeah, I like that. I like the way you're putting that, this sort of amplifying, in part because this feels right and the experience of all this. And it's also, maybe there's a helpful note in there too, besides just sort of naming the truth. But and I think the entering the world of serious illness, um, whatever the role, can feel like it wrenches you, like it's a whole other world,
Yeah.
like you're whisked away to some other place with different rules, and so it can be so unfamiliar
Mhm.
in so many ways. It may be tempting to think that the rest of your life doesn't enter into it. So what you have learned before about or ago with serious illness might feel irrelevant because it's so new. But I think what your frame points us to is it's not a different world. This is the same world. You are still a human being. This is another chapter, another moment, another set of conditions or whatever else. But it may not be as exotic as it feels, which
Mhm.
I take as kind of good news because the rest of our life, the way we've gotten through our days outside of serious illness are relevant and have something to teach us. And we maybe know, in other words, maybe we know more than we think we do in this frame.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
even though things can be so we can be feel so disoriented, right? Of like, what is this and what's going to happen and what's my new normal and what am I adjusting to, right? A lot of uncertainty and a lot of gray. And
Mm.
with that, with that discomfort, sometimes we forget what is familiar and what is available to us. And
Mm-hmm.
like, these relationships, there are seeds of the relationships that we had with ourselves, with others, that are still there, even though they feel really different. And maybe we need to figure out how to take time to carve out connecting to those places of familiarity, um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
connect to the places where they're still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I think any familiarity in this, when you're in sort of a free fall around, and it's not just a moment, right? It's moment after moment, to your point, it's all changing. So it's not like serious illness is about the diagnosis. I mean, that's just the beginning. And so there's moment after moment after moment, and it can feel so dang disorienting. So toeholds of familiarity, even temporary ones, even teeny little ones, can be so valuable
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
in that free fall. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And when it is a free fall, right, we can sometimes forget that, like, no, change is really constant. We've navigated tons of change. We've adapted to things being
Hmm.
different than we expected many, 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 many times. Maybe not in as big a way as this. We
Mm.
have done that before. We have skills there.
Yeah.
We can have ground there. Even if it requires some leap of faith or imagination that the change of the
Mm.
past is relevant to how we might do it in this really, like, big, kind of
Mm.
scarier place.
Yeah. That's nicely put. And as with other sort of daily, more mundane versions of this theme of change, like I think I know I focus on sort of the hard news with that, like, oh shoot, like I was doing okay and now it's changing. Now I understood this spot and now I'm not, and I don't get to be there anymore. If this a statement like this, that things are always changing, often brings to mind for me like loss, that we're always losing things. Um,
Yeah.
and that may be true, but we're also moving towards things. We're also getting to new things, and that change overlay doesn't just mean the good things are going to change, but the hard things are going to change too. So whether it's the pits of grief or self-loathing or whatever, that too, if we allow it, if we roll with it, can and will change as well.
Mhm.
It feels like a call to grieve and to appreciate as we're
Yeah.
going. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like, can we slow down even in the moments where things feel pretty excruciating and we don't want to slow down through them? We want to speed through them. We want to get to the next place. but can we slow down for a minute and just acknowledge like, yeah, I feel grief. This isn't the same. And I like how it was, or I was at least comfortable there. And like it's changing and there's sadness there or remorse or whatever. I mean, I think the kind of relieving thing is like we can pay attention to these things or not, and they're still going to change. Like we actually don't have to pay more attention. It's still going to change. And also maybe the experience of the changing, the experience of the evolving is different when we pay attention to it or just give it some love or not resist it so hard.
And maybe including that love is we'll circle back to this point, but love for yourself moving through it's hard, so that's a loving overlay will serve very, very well. Well, okay, my friend, there's a lot to say. Should I go ahead? Sorry. Yeah,
let's do it. I love how we kind of end up talking about the next thing as we're talking. So, right, we relate to be in connection, right? To feel connected, and we know we need that, right? When the external circumstances or the internal circumstances, but when things are changing, like we do need buoys of connection, points of reference. We need one another. When we're grieving, we need one another. We often don't know how to articulate how we need each other, but we need one another. It's like I think I'll say my bias is that it's a pretty primal need, base human need, connection. But how do we find that when everything feels unfamiliar? And the place that were easy connection before are like, oh, I don't really want to talk to my best friend about this because I don't want to make her sad. And actually, she just like kind of wrote things because she doesn't want me to be sad and I feel worse. So that doesn't feel available to me. Like, how do we find new places of connection when everything is new and kind of the only thing that we're aching for is something familiar?
Yeah. And it's extra hard too, as you're saying, the points of connection that served you in the past, whether it's with a friend or a place or a thing or whatever else, may not feel so right now too. So while we're longing for familiarity, the familiar stuff may not work so well. But I guess it's kind of gets at works towards what end? What do we mean by works? I don't think works just means feel good. But feel maybe oriented. Maybe the goal is feel like we belong, or just the act of maybe the means and the ends are the same here. Just an awareness of being connected to anything might be itself its own salve of a kind.
I think we have to get that. I think we have to get that basic sometimes in these moments of like our senses in this moment of like my butt on the chair, the things I can actually see, right? Like that is real. Those are real places of connection. And sometimes that is the thing that's inarguably available to us. And when everything else feels like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how we will ever talk about this. I don't know if I'll ever feel like your wife again in the way that I want to. But I do have some ability to access, even when our bodies are changing too, sensory connection that can be real respite, if momentarily.
And orienting, like you can kind of bank on that. That's a real feeling.
I was talking to a client yesterday. Oh, you want to go?
Please. No,
I am.
please.
I was talking to a client yesterday and she was talking about how her experience of her body is changing because she can feel her tumors. And we just talked about like, what is it to actually be with that? What is it to find connection through that? Like, okay, here is sensory awareness. Here's a sensory connection to your body that you didn't have before. And it's kind of scary. It's like not the place of connection that she wants to have with her body. And yet there it is. And impacted when she's in her garden and she's using her chest muscles. It's impacted when she takes a really deep breath. Like I was just so touched at how courageous it is to find connection through that of like, okay, we can have a whole conversation about how you talk to it, what you might say to it, and how you want to relate to it. And also it's a thing you can feel that is in your body and like connect to it. But like, whew, the things we don't imagine actually trying to do, you don't project into the future. Like one day I'm going to try and figure out how to be more connected through my sensation of a tumor in my chest. Right.
Right. Right. And this isn't a hyper, we don't, to some degree, we get to curate our points of connection, the ones we pay attention to or the ones we go with, but not necessarily. I mean, it feels like, suffering can be one of the most connecting forces, and because it is so universal. So, among other things you're saying, the point of connection, the feeling that can come with it may be pain or something noxious. And that is still a connection of a kind. And it's hard to get excited about those things. But I do believe there's a place in us as human beings, as creatures who have the potential for awareness. Like we can, it seems to me like there is a plane. I don't mean to, not in a spiritual bypass way, but there is a place where the fact that we can feel anything is amazing. And that to me is an elemental, fundamental, basic place. And to your point, like I think, we get in trouble when we blow past the fundamentals because they seem to, oh, that's the basic thing. I'll feel my butt in a chair. Okay, whatever. But that's why so many spiritual traditions point us to things like the breath or feeling your butt in a chair or whatever else. I mean, these are, you need to go back to that root. Or it's very helpful to go back to that root. And sometimes the root doesn't feel good, but there is some majesty. If we can, and I got to be careful, it's not an aspiration. I don't want to see it as an achievement, but I do think there is a place where even pain can be a reminder that we are connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess where my mind goes when I hear you say that is, sometimes it's just so, it's not our orientation. I mean, sometimes it really is and can be too much our orientation, but in this space in particular, we can feel really isolated because we don't want to reach out for connection or connect to our sadness or through our sadness, through our grief or through our despair. Right? Or through our anger. We think like other people don't want that. I don't want to dump that on somebody else. I don't want to share it because I don't want to be that person. Oh, I don't want to share it because they just want me to be fighting. Right. But those are really inarguably real places that are ripe for connection because of their realness, because of their rawness. And we, on all sides of this, as a person living with illness, as a person living next to somebody with illness, can we have more space and softness for each other with the stuff that we more classically think of as hard or ugly or negative, and figure out how to be connected in it? Again, not do anything about it. Maybe that's kind of the trick. Like we don't have to about it, but we can be together. It's okay. We find safe places to be connected and together with that.
Yeah.
It's big stuff though. It's really risky and it's vulnerable and
I keep running into this piece, and that's part of, and that vulnerability and that risky thing goes with the faith that you mentioned earlier. Those seem kind of important pieces of the puzzle, not to be necessarily sidestepped. I mean, I think where happiness is an option, choose it. If you don't have to hurt, great. Then I'm not saying I want to fetishize pain or something like that, but it happens to be a pretty real thing. And I know I need a daily reminder that this is about kind of being real, not curating myself. So I only present you, my friend Bridget, with the good stuff or the easy stuff or the things that might not, challenge you. I spent a fair amount of time, I and many, I think it was and we think of that as a kindness, I suppose, to kind of spare you some of our hard stuff, something like that. And there's a proportionality in here. I think maybe we've all been around ourselves and others, folks who just it you can live from the wound all the time too, and that can have its own hazard. But I guess where I'm going here is just to kind of at least watch and maybe try to upend that penchant to curate ourselves and present ourselves to each other in some simple, easy, palatable way. That's only a sliver of where life hangs out. So I think so much of this note here is more about something real or authentic than good or easy or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean,
Can I ask you a question, Bridge?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, sweetheart.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
go. No, please do.
I was going to say a statement about connection that helps me. I wonder if what you feel about it, which is just to point out, like, we feel disconnected a lot of the time, or we aren't connected all the time. Um, it feels like an important truth to say, no, 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 we actually are all connected. That is the true state. We can't not that you can't. It's like, how do I not be in the world? I am in the world, and the world is connected. And so
Mhm.
that is a true native state that we don't have to create. We don't have to. It exists, but things can gum us up, so we lose touch of that connection with that connection, or we don't feel it. But that seems importantly different to me, because that tells us there's something in us that needs to kind of get out of the way more than we have to go build a bridge to something. If the
Yeah,
bridge is there, does that sound right to you?
totally. It feels really related to this idea that like we can pay attention to it or not, and things are going to change. We can
Mhm.
lean into it or not. We are connected. I think we often, because so much of our thinking is sort of stratified on the like good bad boundary, we think good or good bad binary. Like we think connected
Mhm.
is a good feeling and disconnected is a bad feeling. And actually, connection can be a huge wide spectrum of feelings. It might be really painful to be connected to something.
Mhm.
It might be all of the things simultaneously. It may feel really good, right? Like it's, but if we start to
Mhm.
break down that, like, I feel good when I'm connected versus actually I feel connected when I'm connected.
Mhm.
That could hold
Mhm.
a wide range of experiences. But yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. Like, you know, connection, maybe the assumption should be that connection is inherent. Can we open our eyes to it? Can we make it more conscious? Can we give some language to it? Can we help ourselves feel it as respite?
Yes.
And this
Yeah.
translates like actually beyond having a body, right? We know we also still feel
Mhm.
connected to people after they have died, right?
Mhm.
So this is multidimensional.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. And animals too.
And
Yeah, and what we're talking about, yeah, and things.
yeah,
We're talking across layers, and so it sounds like folks out there. If it sounds like we're contradicting ourselves sometimes, maybe we
yeah,
are. But these exist at different layers. So we're pointed to any one plane or any one layer of our
yeah,
multifaceted humanity. It looks and smells different. So we're trying, maybe we're speaking across these sort of planes. But it feels, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Luna shared in
Well,
the chat,
anyway.
Luna shared in a chat a desire around not wanting to be a burden.
Mm.
That's been really big. And also how much energy is required to process toxic positivity and spiritual bypassing.
Mhm.
A few big topics.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons we're calling out this doesn't always like the side of the spectrum that doesn't necessarily feel good. Is so key to calling out and welcoming into the mix too, because it's here. But
Yeah.
sorry, Bridge, you were gonna say, yeah.
Oh, the burden one is so tender, right? Like what is a burden and what does that mean and how do we feel it and who told us what kind of existence is burdensome
Mhm.
and what do we in our in our beautifully loving desire to protect other people, what do we decide for them that they haven't decided for themselves, like they can't handle something or they don't want to, or that it translates to burden for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I guess, yeah, I feel like, it's bold and it's brave and it also takes a lot of energy. And if we're thinking about relationship and connection to other people specifically, sharing this feels like a burden. I feel like I'm a burden. It's hard for me. You have to do so much for me. And actually hearing from the other person's experience, which may include like, yeah, sometimes this is really hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be here and I wouldn't be anywhere else. And sometimes I really want to be somewhere else. Right.
Yeah. Yep. One of
But
those,
that's
all of the above.
connecting across through this idea of burden and finding out here's what's real for me about my feeling about burden or what I've absorbed about being burdensome, and hearing from the other person, like, I don't know, that doesn't really land for me. Like, this is what I want. It's hard,
Yeah.
but this is
Yeah,
life.
this is yeah. I mean, right on. I think this burden one is such, as you're saying, it's such a biggie in this field, and we bump into it a lot in our cell. And it's huge. And it's a sort of one of the central experiences, I think, of living with illness, at least in modern times. Um, and I don't know, personally, I have so many feelings whenever I hear that word. I mean, for me, one, it feels like something of an indictment of the society that we have created, that we would be considered burdens for living through something extremely natural and beyond our control. How the hell? Yeah. So I hear that word. I hear the reality of it. I have my own relationship with that word, a big one. And I also resent it in myself and others in a way that, because on some level, like we're saying, like being alive is being a burden. You've got needs. There's just no way
Yeah.
to not be a burden and be alive. Some burdens seem much more exciting and palatable than other kinds of burdens or something. But here again, we're just ruthlessly need to normalize these states. They
Yeah.
are natural.
Yeah.
And I also think,
yeah, go.
oh, sorry, Gage. I was just going to say, just a complete thought. I think it's just one of the reasons why, besides working with each other and together as individuals and as communities, part of this work, this is just a tangent, seems to be also that, taking aim at culture and society and how we choose as a people, the framing of reality that we choose as a people, because there's so much consequence that flows from that choice. So part of this work, just a complete thought, is that we have to kind of also take aim at society and the culture and the framing. That's all.
I feel like whenever I think about burden, I think about you talking about interdependence, right? And really complicating dependence versus independence. And again, this sort of like binary either or frame, like we're kind of good on our own or we're not, right? When the reality is like, that's not a thing. It is this like
Right.
we live in a deeply interdependent state that.
Uh-oh, Gidget, are you muted?
Oh,
Can you
no,
hear me?
not. I can.
I can't hear you. Huh.
I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Please proceed.
Uh, just that we live in a deeply interdependent state that socially, we've been sort of told to not think of it that way, to think of it in this sort of either or.
Mhm.
I think the other thing is that for a lot of people, it's like, I'm okay relying on you as much as I think you rely on me, right? That there has to be this real equalness or evenness in. Can you not hear me again? Better? Huh.
I can hear you, Bridge.
You can? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep talking.
Yeah, you can.
I think, is it BJ's internet?
Probably because he just froze. So go ahead. I can hear you fine.
Okay. I think my internet's shoddy too. It's one of those days. Oh yeah. So burden, relying, dependence, interdependence. I think a lot of times people are like, I feel comfortable relying on somebody who I feel like relies on me on an equal amount, right? And that's just like not how these things go, right? It's like maybe over some long arc we can feel some equalness, but sometimes the experience is just not that way. And the way that I think about that is like, that's okay. At some point, the person who's carrying more weight here in another relationship will be carried more, right? And that interdependence is so much bigger than two people in a relationship or three or four or five people in a family. It's
Between the two of you.
Jeez, man, what the heck?
on some level
we're
by
talking
asking for
about
help, by
connection.
receiving space, we are communicating it is okay. Oh yeah. Okay, now hold on. My internet's unstable, so let's see.
Oh, sweetheart.
I love the Mettle webinars because they're never lacking realness.
Nope. And I love that we're talking about connecting with this internet. Anyway.
Okay, maybe we're together now.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, great. I think let's move on.
Yeah, okay. But I did hear this. There's cosmic balance. I mean, at any one snapshot, there's vast asymmetries in just about any relational dynamic. I think to get to the parity, you've got to pull way back on the lens and see that everyone born, everyone dies, and there's your parity. And otherwise, details one moment to the next. There's some cosmic balance, but that's as
but it doesn't work out perfectly, right?
No.
It's like
no.
Between the two of us, it doesn't work out perfectly, but over time, right? Like we all take our sort of right roles in different relationships of more or less,
Yes. It's sort of a total economy. Any one snapshot will be vastly inadequate and distorted.
Yes, and it could look very burdensome or something. It could look like, wow, this is very out of whack, but that's not the whole picture. The whole picture is so much bigger.
Yeah.
And intergenerational and right.
Yeah.
Noha shared a question just about like quality of connection and quality of connection mattering more than just sort of the black and white feeling connected or not.
Mm.
And I think, yes. And what is quality? And are we not doing this like good, bad thing around quality, or can we just open that up? It doesn't mean don't seek more places of connection that feel good or feel resonant, but also I think sometimes with the word quality, especially in our space, we get real like good quality, high quality, best quality.
Yeah, we should do a webinar on what the world would look like if we just dropped adjectives altogether. I mean, I think of like high school writing classes or whatever. I mean, there's a real truth that we are constantly coloring our experience. This way. And while that's there's some accuracies describing a current condition, it ends up being prescriptive or something like and we end up castigating anything that hurts. And one of the themes today is so much is that you got to have this total picture of sensations. You can't crowd out pain. That too is a connector. And so anytime you're trying to keep certain things out and amplify other things, it's very easy to get into trouble. But I wonder if the question, nuance. And I wonder if the question also gets at just quality more as the nature of like a description of the connection. And maybe as that comment comes up for me, it's sort of like, what would be the quality of a connection I seek? Well, I suppose just to play with that thought, it would simply be an accurate one, a faithful one, where what actually is happening is the stuff that's being transmitted, that it's not so colored that its filters sort of make something unreal about it or partially real. So I take that comment to get to the quality of connection, meaning like for me, just the nature of the connection and what is actually being transmitted. And for me, my hope would be that it's just an accurate one or a full one, not a good one or an easy one, but
No,
something.
it's just clarifying. I mean, I may feel more connected to someone in a support group rather to than a familiar person.
Yeah.
Totally. Um, Sarah Ann is sharing. I find one of the hardest things is to love people in leaving, whether they're leaving an area, leaving a group to do something for themselves, or just stepping back for whatever reason, to not take this personally at all and to wish them well from my heart. Yeah. I love an Irish goodbye. I'm not really trying to hang out in those leavings, right? Transitions are hard. Because how are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to acknowledge?
Yeah. I think, by the way, as you say that, oh, Deb's here. I was just gonna say to finish the sentence, as you say that, like, life is weird. I think we should all be a little weird, and life's befuddling. I think
Yeah.
we love people who have their shit together and present so, but I don't know. More and more, I just give me someone who's honestly befuddled. I don't know how else to be with the truth of all this. Anyway, Deb, shall we invite Deb into the mix?
Yeah, let me unmute you, Deb.
Hey,
Hi, Deb.
Hey, Deb.
I love all of what you've said. It's just been beautiful. But I recently had a close friend who was diagnosed with a pretty serious illness, and I hope she's on this call. I invited her. I hope she's here. But she did something brilliant. She posted on Facebook to make the announcement, and her last sentence was. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but she said, if you're uncomfortable with this news, I ask you to be present with your uncomfortableness, just like I'm being uncomfortable with this news and this process myself. And I'm happy to be with you in the place that's real for you and what's real for me. And I thought, wow, I mean, that just says it all. Like, I mean, what a wonderful invitation and a beautiful way to not take on anything else that anybody else is going through, but at the same time to just be present in that realness. So anyway, I don't know if she's on the call but whatever, I just wanted to say that I wanted to add that because it felt like the perfect timing for what you all were talking about in terms of burden and communication and changing of relationships. Because I think back with my 4-year journey, if I would have had that statement to just keep on repeating that to whatever was coming my way, just like, yeah, I can see you're really uncomfortable with that. Can we just be there, you know? So anyway,
Yeah.
my love, my love to you all. It's just been beautiful. So
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I mean, what a generous speaking to and inviting to be uncomfortable together.
yeah, absolutely. Or anything, uncomfortable, comfortable, whatever. I mean, just, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Something
just be real and I'll be real and
Yes.
whatever it is. Yeah,
Live happily and sadly ever after.
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
That is so beautiful. I also don't want something else that you snuck in there to slide by, which is one of the things that we might shy away from all these connected places because you got to feel a lot of things. And
Yeah.
there's the feeling of the things, but then there's this knock-on effect that I know. Oh, well, I won't out us, Deb, but this is something
It's
we've
okay. You
discussed.
can say anything, BJ.
Let's just say this is something we have discussed together,
Yes.
which is there's this can be this quick reflex to then be responsible for what's transmitting, for the feelings or cheering the person up or somehow counterpointing back to this.
Exactly.
It's supposed to feel good or something like that. So that
Yeah.
you made a comment there about feeling it, but not taking responsibility for those feelings. And
Exactly.
that's a
Yeah.
humongo detail and a really difficult skill to develop, but really an important one. So thank you for noting that too, dear Deb.
Yeah, well, thank you for emphasizing that because that's definitely a growth edge for me. So, yeah.
Many of us. Yeah.
So,
It also just strikes me that in so many of these places where we may be uncomfortable or we're learning how to be with something for the first time, is that like our words really fail us? Like we don't have access to the right language. And that's when people insert the stuff that they've heard a lot that often like doesn't land, that's just like overly grossly reassuring or feels really empty. And I think it's such a profound, big, juicy, squishy practice to just be with each other and be like, I don't actually know what to say.
mhm.
I wish, like, I feel a real desire to say something right now, and I actually don't know, but I feel connected to you. I feel for you. I don't even actually have the words for what I feel yet, but I'm feeling a lot and I'm here.
Mm, beautiful.
It's so caught up on like, what do I say? What do I say? And sometimes like I'm zero. There's nothing. Like
I have become a huge fan of awkwardness. I mean, it's something that first of all, it can be hilarious, especially but it usually makes for a good story. But it also is one of the things that tells me, oh, this okay. I'm in some real place now.
Mhm.
And like, and
Yeah.
that part of the bond. Maybe that is what's transmitting is daring to share such a space.
Yeah.
So
Not knowing there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And being in the messiness of it, like it's just messy.
Yeah.
And
I see.
it's, yeah, messy resonates for me too, of just like, I think when I first started working with you, BJ, I think one of the first things I said was like, I really like, things to be kind of ordered and make sense and be able to kind of put endings on things or whatever. And now it's just been like this whole journey of like, how can I learn to live with just that messiness of it, not coming out of me, right? Having a horrible conversation with one of my children or having them say something to me. And then like, how can I still be inside of this and be present to that messiness and not try to push it away or push away what's inside of me.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
Right on, Deb. Thank you. Thank you for speaking up here. Right on.
yeah, I know there's lots more. You guys are really, really getting it and going deep. I love it. Thank you so much.
All
I
right.
think the messy places, and I really I'm an extra, I mean, maybe we all are, but I'm an extraordinarily messy parent and or messy in my parenting. I feel a lot of mess there constantly. Um, and it's like the buoy there for me is like, this gonna change. I don't know how, but it's gonna change. It's not gonna feel like this forever. These dynamics aren't gonna be the same forever. We will find more words. We'll have another conversation that complicates or clarifies the thing that's happening right now, or we won't, and it will still change. Right.
Yeah.
With effort, without effort, with something in between.
Yeah. The bad news there is you can't control it. The good news is you can't control it.
Yes. Right.
So
Yeah.
you're kind of, there's an innocence in this. Yeah.
Someone shared, oh, maybe it's Sarah Ann again, but which I really feel like we should spend some time with, which is this experience of pain. It's changing and affecting her ability to be present and positive with others. Pain med I was taking was recently discontinued. The substitutes have serious drawbacks. In pain, it's a whole different level of hard to be with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sugarcoat that one, but you did point out that word positive stuck out in that comment.
Yeah.
At least a piece of that puzzle may be so letting go of the need for it to be positive. I don't mean to say you need to do anything here. There's a truth to that, and when your body is just screaming in pain, so much of what we're saying here just flies right out the window. So I don't want to belittle that, but I wonder if there's some freedom for you if it's possible to drop the impulse or the desire for positivity in this mix. Maybe that loosens the knot a little.
Yeah. I guess I'm just like kind of rereading your words over and over again, because like this is where the rubber hits the road moment, right? Like the pain is so loud that paying attention to other things is hard or impossible. The nausea is so loud that it is the only thing that exists. And what does it mean? Like, what is being with other people when that's a major lens or a major layer between? And maybe it's not a kind of being with we've experienced before. It's not talking, it's sitting side by side, it's not being close but knowing I can hear you in the kitchen, right? Like, how does the being with change, and is there any place of connection that provides respite even if it looks really different?
Yeah. On that note, I wonder too, for me, when I'm in those places, this is where connections with animals, nonverbal creatures, inanimate objects too, have been extra poignant for me, if that's helpful at all, to sidestep the need to say the right thing or communicate in that sort of cognitive way.
Yeah. I feel like it, maybe it's also the reminder to all of us, which is like, what are the ways, regardless of what our role is and what the experience is at the moment, we're ill, someone else is ill. Like, what are the ways that we know how to be with people that isn't through talking? It's like where the doulas have a lot to tell us about, like how you hold space, how you sit in a space, how you connect when like we're not going to have like a heady cognitive or deep emotional experience in the ways that we've understood them before.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to be together actually and be with one another. We just don't practice very many of them much of the time. But in this space, we gotta, because there's going to be a time when we can't communicate to one another, or the communication is just really, really, really different verbally. And we can still be really connected, I think.
Amen to that. I do think that it's a call for practice, and that's something we can practice all the time. However we're feeling, it's, I think, a good piece of this whole frame around relationships is keying into, yes, communication and the cognitive and language and all that stuff, so helpful as humans, but it's just one sliver of the ways we relate and the means through which we feel our relationships and the way that we feel them moving and roll with them. I think that felt thing, that aesthetic thing, is so ripe for all of us to practice in a daily way. And it's when I think in those zones is where we realize we're so much more connected than I think we often think we are.
Yeah, totally. Should we see? I don't know. I think we only have a couple more slides and we only have a few.
Gosh, they're so juicy.
What else is there? I know. Thank you all so much for everything you're bringing.
Yes. I mean, you've touched on this already, but this one is to not be overlooked.
Yeah.
It's a basis for all else, and perhaps.
Yeah. And maybe ultimately the one thing that is always available, even if it looks really different, and the place that we extend from, right? And if we're thinking about a lot, the lot of the words that or ideas that have been tossed around, like awkwardness, realness, love, authenticity, right? Like we experience those things relational to the depth that we know them in ourselves. I think, I mean, other people can teach us about that, and then it opens up a new place in ourselves. But we can't always be available to this. Sometimes we don't want to be. And that's like, I guess the thing that's kind of interesting for me in that space is like just choosing. Like, I don't like this right now. I don't wanna, I'm gonna make a conscious choice to do something else. Like, okay, that's great. Cool. Do that. And also, can we not forget, even if it looks really different and feels really different, that, you know, this is a primary, at least my bias, right? My lens is like, this is a primary relationship, me with me. And that's the thing that like, I'm gonna have to negotiate.
Yeah.
Inarguably.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I wonder if it's a helpful reframe. I know it is for me sometimes, instead of like, I need to be alone, or I'm going to go be alone, or I want to be alone.
Mm.
It's to your point, it's more accurate, I think, and I'm more helpful to say, I need to go be with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Not that you're ever not with yourself, but really I want to go focus on being with myself. It's not an isolationist message.
Yeah. No, because like, how do we do that? How do we do that when we're alone? Right. That's like a major sticking point for me. Like, I feel more connected to myself with other people. So that's a real learning edge to like go be alone, to be with me. That's very hard. Right. But how do we learn what brings us into connection with ourselves and conversation with ourselves, regardless of the external circumstances, alone, our pets, surrounded by people, we're at work,
Yeah.
in a body that's totally unfamiliar to us.
Yeah, it reminds me of a tangent, Bridge. Sometime over coffee, I want to hear more. I've heard you describe yourself as such an extrovert, and when I've heard you say that, I'm always surprised. Not that you're great with people, but I'm always surprised to hear that for some reason. Tangent.
Mm.
Take that
Yeah.
off the webinar,
I
but
mean, someone's asking for a part two. We can talk about extrovert and introversion. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, shall I kick us ahead
Yeah.
a
I
little
think
bit?
I think, we've talked about, so much of this
Yeah.
uh, is related to intimacy and vulnerability. And I think, right, like the awkward moments, the quiet moments, the moments when there are no words, the moments where like, I really don't want this. I wish that this is not the thing that's happening. Like, these are also moments of a different, maybe deeper, maybe more connection or intimacy than we've ever experienced before. And that is really vulnerable. And vulnerable is the spectrum of feelings, right?
Right. Not always just the fun ones or the easy ones. Oh no.
No. And sometimes fun.
Yes.
And juicy, right? Like, it's like, can we open up the spectrum for all of these words that we're using to describe parts of our experience to be really full and contradictory simultaneously, right? Of like,
Yep. Amen. Preach.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's see.
Yeah. I feel like we have like 4 minutes. So if there's somebody else that wants to jump in, there's a call for part two. We have half our slides still. So maybe we will do more of this at some point.
Yeah, as you
Yeah, we could
said,
just save this for part two. I love that.
yeah, maybe won't whip through the
Yeah.
slides then. Are there some final comments or questions out there, folks? Let's see.
Yeah.
Do you want to read any of these, Gidgey?
Sure. I'm just reading Noha's comment. Social pain is real pain. Physical pain is more than physical. Maybe elaborate on the role of expressive arts in decreasing perception of pain. Another, yeah, another big one, right? Just like the many layers of pain, right? And of course, like so much bigger than the physical pain. And yes, appreciate
Yeah.
your just to the need for more space to talk about that.
Yeah, and Noha's point, if I'm reading that correctly too, is we know this, that expressing how we're feeling can help us change our relationship to how we're feeling and can then change how we feel. So I just want to shout out to that piece of Noha's comment that there's a place, a therapeutic place for expression in all this, and that does change the experience.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, just so much love and appreciation, which goes right back out to all of you. We're here because of you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Such an honor.
Yeah. Shall we read Deb's comment here? Let's see.
Sure, go for it. Yeah.
For me, that's for Deb, my relationship with the living world, the movement in the world, sunrise, sunsets, bird song, sound of a breeze provides the depth of relationship I seek. I love sitting with my bare foot on the ground while the world moves around me. Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful, Deb.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's so nice to realize that like we can just notice those things for a moment. Like it doesn't have to be that we go and sit on the, beach and really have time to like, I think I've related to like connecting with nature for a long time as like a thing that it was really, I had to go and do, and it required like an attention and a time and a capacity that maybe I didn't feel so able to. And more the realizing that like in a moment is like, can I see the wind moving through the leaves, and then I go right back onto the other thing. That there is a natural world that is moving, that is reminding us of change, that is reminding us of cycles that we can take glimpses of.
Right on. And once you include yourself as part of nature, then you really have access to it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you all so much.
Beautiful, guys. Well,
To be continued.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yes,
We'll do
this will
part
come up.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Happy midsummer, everybody.
Yeah, everybody. Good to see you all. Be with y'all. Bridge, thanks as ever. You rock, girl. You're beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Sonia.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being here. Happy weekend.
Happy weekend.
Bye.
Bye, guys.